Welcome to Lucky in Leadership Podcast. We're your hosts, Emily C.
and Emily J.
And today on our episode, we are going to give you a little insight on transformational leadership and touch on the topics of law and policy and rural nursing. We have three special guests joining us today. Clara Barton, who honorably founded the American Red Cross, Dorothea Dix, who was an RN superintendent during the Civil War and courageously challenged 19th century norms, and lastly, Margaret Sanger, an ex-RN who so bravely advocated for women's health. Each will tell us about their own experiences with leadership and the actions they took to accomplish change for a righteous cause.
Our definition of transformational leadership is a theory of leadership where the leaders work with teams or followers beyond their self-interest to identify needed change and create a vision to guide, inspire, and execute the change in parallel to committed members of a group. They are focused on making tomorrow better not only for themselves but for the greater good. These three guests we have today are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to transformational leaders in healthcare. With that being said, let's introduce our first guest.
Welcome to Lucky in Leadership, Clara. We are so happy to have you here. Let's start with the basics. Would you tell us a little bit about your background?
Hello everyone, my name is Clarissa Harlow Barton, but you can call me Clara. At 18 years old, I became a teacher, but quit shortly after and started my job in Washington, D.C. as a recording clerk. As for credentials, I do not really have any, but I do have a long background of helping soldiers in dire time, as well as becoming the founder of the American Red Cross Association.
When we talk about rural nursing, this refers to nurses who work in sparsely populated and underserved geographical locations. What are some challenges regarding the rural nursing environment you work in?
The disparity I encountered was that many people did not have the access to care that was necessary in the time of a disaster, especially those in rural areas and conflict zones. People were dying throughout the world, mainly soldiers, because of the areas that they lived in. With the implementation of the American Red Cross, which has a vision of turning compassion into action so that all people affected would receive care, shelter, and hope, in 1882 we were able to implement disaster relief access and decrease the death rate of many. During this time, I took the role of leadership through creating this program to provide aid to soldiers.
Thank you, Clara, for talking with us today. Your foundation has truly impacted the lives of many people and continues to do so today. Now on to our second guest, Dorothea Dix.
Hi, Dorothea. Thank you for coming today. Would you be willing to share with us your background?
I am honored to be able to speak with you today. My name is Dorothy Dix. I was born in Hampton, Maine in 1802. I pursued a career as a nurse, focusing on the core nursing value of patient advocacy. During the Civil War, I volunteered to be the superintendent of nurses, where I was a recruiter and set up training programs and field hospitals. After the war, I wrote and lobbied for better treatment of mentally ill patients.
When we talk about law and policy within health, we think of direct decision plans and actions that have direct impact on the delivery of healthcare. Could you tell us a bit about how law and policy have impacted your work?
At the federal level, I lobbied for Congress to pass a bill that would devote land to be used for the mentally ill, the blind, and the deaf. Unfortunately, the bill was not passed. However, I continued to write and lobby for my cause. I also worked with Massachusetts legislator to increase funds to expand the state mental hospital. The disparity I encountered was that this vulnerable population was being maltreated and neglected. My strive was to advocate for them and give them a voice. I did this by funding 30 hospitals to treat the mentally ill. I demonstrated leadership in my time by working with the healthcare system to provide a better quality of life for an underserved population.
Thank you, Dorothea. We appreciate your voice for those who couldn't be one for themselves. Your courage to openly challenge a norm that you disagreed with is truly inspiring. Now on to our final guest, Margaret Sanger.
Thank you for joining us today, Margaret. We would like to hear first a little bit about who you are and the cause you fought for. Would you be willing to share that with us?
Hi, my name is Margaret Sanger, and I climbed 6 feet up to be here today. Thank you for having me. I completed nursing school at White Plains Hospital. I became an RN and traveled to the Lower East Side of New York City. This is where I saw the health disparity of lower-class women not having access to sexual preventative care or education. I quit nursing after this and became an advocate for all women, especially lower class, for preventative and education on sexual care.
When we talk about law and policy within health, we think of direct decisions, plans, and actions that have a direct impact on the delivery of health care. Can you tell us how law and policy has impacted your work?
Of course, law and policy impacted my work directly. I was advocating during a time where sending and receiving any information about sexual health was illegal due to the Comstock Act of 1873. This did not stop me from advocating for a disparity that was among us, which was little education with women's sexual health. I went against the law that was in place by sending out information about contraceptives and safe sex to women. I then opened the first legal birth control clinic in the country where women can come and get professional advice about sexual health. About 5 years later, I had created the American Birth Control League, which is now known as Planned Parenthood. Yes, I went against law and policies, but it was a chance to change our future for the better. I see myself as a leader in my work because I strive for the better future for women's health and work to empower women to take health into their own hands.
Thank you, Margaret, for your time and tireless effort to create better equality for healthcare for women. That concludes our episode for today on Lucky in Leadership. We would like to thank our guests one last time and give a special thanks to our listeners. Join us next week for our interviews with those who have taken on a different, eviler definition of leadership, including Hitler and Kim Jong-un.
And remember, be the kind of leader you would want to follow.